There's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, fake news, and the like out there, and perhaps even worse, there's a lot of information out there that isn't obviously bad or fake or misinformation or disinformation. It's just not well presented or well researched or appropriately gathered and conveyed. And so there is a fairly simple process that we can follow that has been around since about 5 years now, and it's referred to as SIFT. And I want to just review with you the steps, the 4 steps, and then provide a basic tutorial on how it works in an actual search. So let's go over the process of stop, investigate, find, and trace, and how to use it simply but effectively. I want to give credit to Mike Caulfield, who is the first person to come up with this approach. He works at the University of Washington's Center for the Informed Public, for an Informed Public, and he put this out 5 years ago in 2019, and you can go to his blog site, or you can go to the University of Washington's site, or interestingly enough, I find the most effective place, the best explanation for this comes out of the University of Oregon. Do not tell the people at the University of Washington that I'm using the University of Oregon's website to explain their stuff, but I just find it that they've done a nice job with it. So Mike Caulfield is the guy. If you want to go do a deep dive, you can go to his blog site, just Google Mike Caulfield and give it a look. He goes into more detail about his thinking on this approach to verifying information. So again, I have stolen these images from the University of Oregon. I am claiming fair use. I'm sure they would agree. So the steps are, I think when you think about them, pretty obvious, but it's amazing to me how few people actually do these things. So when you either are searching something, or you get a link from someone, or you get something that comes without looking for it, as happens in social media and in emails all the time based on algorithms that we have connected to through cookies and other connections to the internet. First thing is, when you look at it, just stop and think about, what is the information? Where does it appear to come from? Is this worth my time? Is this something I want to spend some time investigating? We all kind of want to believe information that confirms our existing biases. And so what we tend to do is, when we come across something that basically confirms our existing biases, with which we agree, we just want to accept it and send it out there and move on. That is a really, really dangerous thing to do. So always, and this includes when you do, let's say you do a Google search and you know that page comes up, and I'll talk about this more in detail in a minute, and you see all of those links based on what you searched. First of all, understand that result is going to be different for you than it will be for anybody else, because it's based on your algorithms and the algorithms that are with Google and how they interpret your engagement with the internet. So understand that has been built just for you, and not necessarily in a good way. The temptation is to look at that and find the thing that you agree with or that confirms what you're looking for, and not even click on it, just move on. That is always a mistake. second step is one that very few people do, and that is to investigate the source of the information. Who are they? What do they believe in? Do they have a code of ethics? How are they funded? Where are they based? What is their purpose? And there is a process that you can follow again that I'm going to go into in more detail here in a moment. But just understand that you need to get a feel for who is providing this information and why. If they don't provide that information to you, if they don't tell you enough about themselves and how they function, that's the first sign about that you should use to say, nope, I'm not going to go here. I'm not going to believe anything that's posted here. I'm out of here. If you find something on a topic that you find interesting and you discover that the source of that information doesn't meet the standards that you need to set for yourself, it doesn't tell you how they go about their business, it doesn't tell you who they are, all of the things that I think common sense tells us. This is critical thinking 101. Where does this information come from? Who provided it? And how do they go about doing their work? If you can't find that, keep looking. If the topic is of interest to you, if you want to find out if the information is solid, go find a trusted source. And you need to be developing trusted sources, so you don't have to go look every single time. Decide what you think the standards ought to be to find a source that you consider to be trustworthy, and then create a list of those. So on my phone app, you can hear my phone ringing in the background because it's got stuff coming in. On my phone app, I have a spot on my home page that has 9 information sources that I trust. And I rarely go outside those sources to confirm information. You go about it in the way that suits you best, but do the heavy lifting, do the critical thinking, go about your business in a serious way, and don't assume that everything you're getting is, well, it's the internet said so. That's strike one. If you want to go any further, I mentioned this later, if you want to go any further with Google, I have a whole separate lesson on that I call Google is not your friend. And trust me, Google is not your friend. So finally, here I think is the one thing that so many people don't do, and that is keep tracing the information until you get to where it came from. Who did the research? Who actually said that? And what was the context in which they said it? Go to that next step and just use the tool. Google can be a powerful tool. The internet can be a powerful resource if you use it correctly and if you use it by fully engaging your critical thinking skills. Where does the information originate and how was it used? A basic example I often use with students is we see memes all the time quoting Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, Abraham Lincoln, and we assume if it's a meme, well, it must be a good quote. Well, 90% of the time it's not a good quote. It's either they didn't say it, or they didn't say it that way, or it's been taken out of context. And there are simple ways to go verify whether something was actually said and to provide the context in which it was said. Thomas Jefferson started the University of Virginia. They have all of his papers and they've put them all online. And so his letters, his speeches, his correspondence are there, and you can do the necessary research. You can do it for almost anybody. Use the tools to your advantage. Don't let them become the way in which you get fooled. Finally, I just want to give you this little tip about journalism. There is an organization that has been around a long time called the Society of Professional Journalists, and it has a code of ethics. And I'm not going to go into detail here. You can find it easily enough. If you really want to do some digging into what journalism ought to be, go to SPJ's homepage and click on their code of ethics and read it. It goes into detail, and they provide examples for each one. And I strongly recommend that if you are using sources that say they are news sources or they're journalists, find out if they even know that there is a Society of Professional Journalists, and find out if they say they follow the SPJ's code of ethics. And that can be one way of testing whether the source is legitimate, if it's solid. Another thing, if you want to really take a deep dive, is to go buy the book Elements of Journalism. It's available on Amazon. It's a great book, the best book on journalism, ethics, and the approach to journalism that I've read in the last 25 years. And let it guide you on these decisions. Now, let's go into a real life example of how to use these 4 steps to help you enhance your critical thinking when it comes to consuming information. Okay, now that we've taken a look at kind of the academic approach to how we're going to try and decipher good information and bad information and make decisions on what we accept as reliable and what we don't, we're going to try to put it into action here. And so I've called up the Huffington Post page, and this has been around for quite a while. Some of you may know about the HuffPost, some of you may not. I am somewhat familiar with it. My impression of it is that it is a left-leaning kind of commentary and occasionally tabloidish kind of a website. But let's follow the steps and see what we have here and how we can use the steps in SIFT to help us decide whether to believe what we're seeing here. So we're at HuffPost, and the first thing that we're supposed to do in sifting is to stop and then investigate. So before we even start meandering through the site, I want to investigate a little bit about what is Huffington Post. Who's behind it? Do they have any ethical standards, etc.? So I'm going to just start scrolling down here, scroll, and see if they have an About Us or an About tab or anything that looks like that. Okay. So here at the very bottom, we do have an About Us link. And so I'm going to open that up. And here we have actually a fairly long list of the management team and a description of their mission. Now, I'm not going to read all of this, but let me just kind of go through it in a couple of the major talking points. So they say they report with empathy and put people at the heart of every story. Okay, fine. We cover real stories about real life. Okay, don't know what that means, but okay. We listen to our readers, cover a diverse range of topics, both global and local. I don't think that's possible, but okay, whatever. Diversity of voices. So far they're kind of talking about warm, fuzzy stuff. What I want to know is, do they adhere to any agreed upon journalistic standards as part of their work? And here's standards. HuffPost endeavors to be accurate in its reporting, transparent and thorough in its sourcing, and fair and independent in its analysis. That's all very good. That's very helpful. Transparent is important. Thorough is important. Transparency to me means they tell you how they go about doing their work. There is a note here on HuffPost grants anonymity to sources so they can provide public information in the public interest. My personal bias is that journalists today are too quick to provide agreement for anonymity. That's a check mark against the reliability of a source for me or in a specific story. I won't go into detail here, but that's me. You need to decide on what your specific list of priorities and what your standards are as a critical thinker. So, and they talk about how they fix errors and stuff. So basically, this isn't bad. It does list some ideas on how they go about their business. It doesn't really go into a lot of specific detail on ethics. And so I would give this a B minus maybe as far as how well they've done on telling me a little bit about themselves. It tells me nothing about their funding mechanism. Now, I presume it's mostly, since I believe this is a free site, it's mostly advertising. I don't know if they have someone who's also a rich person who's funding them. It doesn't say anything about that. I would like to know more. Okay, new polls, it is closed. So let's just click on this. So they're going into what the new latest polls are showing. They're telling you the CNN poll, SSRS poll. This is all fine. I mean, they're telling you where it's coming from. This is very common here. They're using internal live links to take you to other sources. I like that idea a lot. You can now go see the original reporting from CNN on what they found. You can go here and find the original reporting from SSRS. That's also via CNN. As far as that goes, I think that's all very helpful. Now, that doesn't answer for us. Are these polls accurate? What does it tell us about polling in general? So, now you can start getting really deep into the weeds. You can go into, I'm just going to Google here, and again, Google is not your friend. Polling accuracy. And I happen to know that 538, its founder has gone. 538 tries to rate pollsters and then aggregate their information into a reliable conclusion. The problem has been that their accuracy hasn't been all that great in the last couple of elections either. And so Pew Research has an article about election polling. Pew Research is a nonprofit, I think generally reliable, academically leaning organization. I think that they are generally reliable. I think you can feel pretty good about the information they give you. And so they have a whole article with a lot of data. And this is one of the things that I find missing in a lot of reporting today is and Huffington Post said this in its About Us. They want to tell people stories because people want to hear about other people. That's great. Wonderful. Do they tell stories that actually convey important and reliable information? And oftentimes there is no data behind what's being reported. And so they're telling you an anecdotal story that may or may not reflect a larger truth. This is a problem. There's a lot farther we could go. I mean, I could go into Google Scholar and find the latest academic-based research on the accuracy of polling and read that. It just depends on how far you want to go. If you don't have the time to do that for every story, and who does, what you need to do is focus on finding sources that you can rely on and sticking to those based on your own process of critical thinking. Or go to sources that you know are leaning right or leaning left. I tend to go to left-leaning sources, so I read a lot of Politico. I read a lot of that sort of stuff. But I know at the beginning that I'm not going to be getting the full story. I'm going to be getting the story they want to emphasize. And so I know that that's a bias. And so I will also go out of my way from time to time to go to Fox News or to go to other places that lean more to the right. And sometimes just for out of the interest of it, just to see what's going on out there in the bigger political world. But I don't fully trust anything until I have followed all of these steps, and I never share anything unless I either say, I found this interesting because, but I don't know the degree to which it's true, or I say, I believe in this source. So that is the process that we all need to be following. It doesn't need to be onerous. You don't need to have to go through these steps every time. But the bottom line is when you do that first Google search. So let's go in here finally and go into Google, and let's just do who is ahead in the presidential polls. And let's see what it comes up with. Now, you all understand that if you were to go into Google and type in the very same words, you would get a whole different list of responses because Google is basing its response on algorithms that has told it about me and about my habits. So not surprisingly, the New York Times is right at the top. The Economist is at the top. These are places I go all the time, the Washington Post. So that's the first thing you have to know. But what you cannot do is look at this, not click on anything, read the first line and say, oh, okay, so this is my conclusion. This is what I'm going to share with people. This is what I'm going to now believe as of today. You've got to click on stuff. You've got to follow the steps, or you've got to make some decisions on who you're going to believe, who you're going to rely on, and who you're not.